This video is about using a Midi controller to control lighting channels in QLC+. So let me just show you a little bit about the setup here. First of all, I'm using a Korg Nano Control 2, and I set up a profile for it. You want to take a look at my video on how to set up a profile for your Midi controller, and you can use various Midi controllers. They have some that are built in, but you can use your own. I've created a profile for my Korg Nano 2. And if we take a look at it, you can see buttons and knobs and sliders that describe all of the different buttons and sliders and knobs that are available on the Nano Control 2. Now before I do something like this, I usually have a plan on what I want to do. I try to maximize the use of sliders and knobs and push buttons to help me make doing my lighting a lot faster. So I kind of have a game plan as far as what I want to do. Now I go back to mapping. This is very important too. So for my input, I'm mapping my input to the Korg Nano Control 2. Output is just using an ArtNet for the time being. But this is also important too, that you want to indicate that you want feedback coming back to the Nano Control 2. This is so that it will actually send some feedback to that and light up buttons when you have buttons selected. As far as fixtures go, I have some front of house fixtures. I have some downstage 1, downstage 2. There's 8 of each, some center stage lights, about 8 of each, and then some 8 LED RGB washers to create some color. Now, one of my ideas was that I was going to use the push buttons on the Korg Nano Control as values so I could set some of my lighting quickly to like 25% intensity, 50% intensity, 75% intensity would be a quick way to set lighting. And then I can also use the slider to do that. So I had to go in and create some values. So if you look at my different buttons, for example, front of house, I have front of house 1, 25%, 50, 75%, front of house 2, same thing, front of house 3. So it took a little work to set this up, and then I did the same thing for downstage. I have my 8 downstage lights set up at different values. Center stage, same thing, and progressed through that with all of them. Now for the LED washes, I did something a little bit different. I'm using my push buttons next to the sliders to bring up different colors, red, green, and blue. And you can see that as I do that. So I've kind of thought through the process of how I want to use this controller. Then I'm also going to be using some of the buttons over here in this area of the controller to do various things in QLC+. Now again, if you want, it's a very simple process assigning things to the controller. Let me go to my virtual console here, just bump this up in the corner. Once you have established a profile, for instance, we can take a look at this button here. I'll double click on it. And it's assigned to solo track 1. You can either go in and choose those once you've assigned a profile. I can go into a button. I could say solo track 1 and just simply select that button. Or also, I'll just take this one out for a minute and say none. And it's gone. I can also do auto detect and just press my solo button on my Nano Control and it picks it right up. It's nice when you have the profile done because it'll actually pick up the name rather than just give you a number up here. It'll say solo track 1 since I've got that profile established. So all that has been done and we can kind of show you the end result. Now one of the benefits of doing this, when you first look at the Nano Controller 2, you say, well, I can't control many lights with this because it's only got 8 sliders. But here's the trick to doing that. I've created multiple pages, which is what you're looking at down the bottom here. Multiple pages of 8 sliders and then the 3 buttons on here. And even though on the Nano Control, this slider and these buttons are going to all put out the same MIDI message all the time, QLC will only act upon the page that is currently active. So I'm going to bring up my DMX so you can see this. So I kind of lined it up so you can see my front of house lights, my downstage 1, downstage 2, center stage, and then a little bit of my 8 LEDs, but you'll get the idea about that. So let's go into active mode. Now there is kind of a little glitch here that you're going to watch out for. So I go into active mode now. When I move the slider over here, it should only affect the lighting on this page. There is a little glitch here though. If you'll watch my values down here, and you'll see that they're all moving. Alright, it's a very simple fix for that glitch. Before you start moving anything, use your page key, and in this case I'm using my nano controller here, and the track selection forward and back selects my various pages. Once you've done that, it'll kind of straighten itself out. So let me just show you then again. So going forward here, here's my front of house 8 channels. Here's my downstage 1 8 channels. Now these are different pages. And if I actually bring these up here, you can see the different pages. Front of house, downstage 1, downstage 2, center stage, and then upstage would be our washes, of course. So as I progress through using this button, downstage 1, downstage 2, center stage, and then here are my LED wash lights. So now I'm back to front of house. Now, you'll notice now that when I move the slider, only this front of house channel will be selected and will move. So that is a little bit of a glitch you have to watch for. When you first go into run mode by clicking up here, make sure that you just go ahead one page and back one page, and then you'll be ready to go. So this is great now since I'm using this slider and it's only controlling my front of house 1. If I progress to the next page, you'll notice that now I can control this channel, and they can be different values. And I can go to the next page, and I can control this channel, and I can go to the next page, and I can control this channel. So now if I take a look back, and actually if you take a look up here, they're all different values: 62, 34, 90, 75. So that's one of the advantages of this. When you use the page mode, it'll only work on the active page that you have operating there. Now let me just show you a couple other things that I've done here. I'm going to go back to front of house. And that's upstage. Here's our front of house page. Now you notice that our slider is up. I'm going to bring this back down. And then what I've done is I've used the knobs. Once you use a slider in this, the slider becomes overrides anything else that may be active. So to cancel out that slider, you would have to take your mouse and click down the bottom here. But what I did was, since I have a knob sitting above that slider, I used the knob, and if I just give the knob a little twist, it deactivates that slider. It takes that slider out. So I can now press my buttons, and now my front of house is at 75%. And notice, since I'm doing feedback, notice that I actually have the LED lights up here. These are in solo frames, so that you can only select one at a time. So as you see me progressing through, there's my front of house 1 light at 75, at 50, at 25, and then if I press 25 again, it goes out. But you can see the various indicator lights lighting up on my Korg Nano Control 2 as I go through for that. Now if I did have this active like this, well, let's say I did 50%, and I move the slider will take over for that, and then you won't be able to use these controls. Notice that the slider stays where it is now, which is at 64. It's not moving. So in order to cancel that out and have the buttons become active again, I'd have to turn my knob. Okay, now you'll notice that the slider jumps to that value of 50%. Once again, if I move my slider, it overrides the buttons. So if I want the buttons to take effect, and I could actually close that button out, and if you notice, it's going to stay wherever I put the slider. But when you put the button back in, the button will not take effect because the slider takes precedence on this. But if I take my knob and twist it, now it'll jump back to where the button values are. And that's going to be the same for all the channels right across there. So this is a very, very quick way, if you want to go across and set some channel values at different values real quickly. And I thought about that. I said, well, this would be nice to do that, and you can set them at different values. Another thing that I've done here to make this a little bit more rapid in this particular setup, rather than, so I say I've done this with a bunch of different channel values, and I'll go to my second page and I'll do some quick setups here. 50, 50, 75, 75, 25, 25 here. Go to my next page. 75, 75, 75, 75, 75, And let's do one more here. Let's do 25, 25, 25. We'll say it's a little bit darker upstage there. All right, so I have all these different values set. I can now go and record this as a scene if I'd like and save that as a scene. But now you're saying, gosh, when I go back, now I have to press all these buttons. Well, this button here is for stop all functions, which you can click that. I've also used my set button here on the Nano Control 2 to actually push that button. So if I press set, it will cancel all those functions out. So they've all been closed out. Now notice we do have a couple of values that were set here with sliders. So they will have to be taken out. So again, what I've done here is done something a little bit different. I can either be on the page with that slider and twist the knob, or if you hit the X key, I program it so the X key on my keyboard will cancel out anything. So I can quickly go through and see if I have an assignment here, just hit my X key and it will knock all those sliders out. Where do you do that? Let me show you really quickly. Let me get out of run mode for a moment. If you double click on here, notice that you want to do this. This is catch up with external controller. Make sure that is selected. I'm in level mode and you'll see that I have this particular light selected. Selected the dimmer. I've also said monitor the selected channels and update the slider level. That's what gives me this X down here. And I've used the input channel. I'm using the knob, but then I'm also using this key combination. And what I did is I did the same key combination for all the sliders, although there's different knobs for each slider to activate that X and then return the slider to 0. But then I just used the key combination, the same key combination of X for all the sliders, so I can instantaneously take all the sliders out at one time. One thing, so I did want to mention this real quick here. This is important here, catch up with the external controller input value. That's important. This Nano Control 2 is not an automated sliders, so they stay wherever they were put the last time that you used them. So what that means was catch up. So say for instance, let me go back and run mode here. Now again, watch. If I move this, it's moving all the values, so you got to make sure to do a page thing first. Alright, so by checking that catch up with controller box, what I've done is when I go back and forth between the two pages here from front of house, so I have my front of house set here, and my second page is at 100. When I jump back to front of house, I have my second page set up at 100. When I jump back to front of house, if I were to move the slider, my front of house would all of a sudden jump up to 100 and give me a flash. But what it does is when I bring my slider down, when I reach this value of 51, then it grabs a hold of it and now I can move it. So let's say I drop this down further, go to my next page. This is at 100 and look where my slider is, it's way down the bottom. So if I didn't have that checked, as soon as I would wiggle this, the light would jump down to that value. Here I've got to push it up to grab the slider at 100 and now make the gradual adjustment. So that's what they mean by catch up with the values there. It prevents you from making any kind of a flashing when you're moving these sliders around, so make sure you have that checked. I'm going to hit my X key, cancel this slider, go back to my front of house, cancel out that one. So you get the idea about the values. Let's take a look at the LED page here, which is my wash page. So in here, I can just do some quick setups with my LEDs. So if I want a red LED wash, I can do that. These are not solo frames, these are independent frames. So I can use all three buttons simultaneously. So if I combine red with green, I'll now have a yellow LED light, and you notice on my Nano controller up the top here that both are lit up. If I do all three, red, green, and blue, then I get kind of a white light. If I get rid of the green, now I would be pink. If I just do green and blue together, now I'm going to have kind of an aqua color. But you can do that. So that was my thinking behind this. I can do my red, green, blue. Now, I can't control the intensity of the individual channels, but in this particular light I'm using, it has an individual intensity channel. So I'm going to do that, or I just slide up my intensity then from my red. Now control the intensity. And in this case, I'm going to use the knob to control another feature on the light, which is strobe. So the knob, you'll notice that in this particular page, I actually put in the virtual controller here, I actually put the knobs in. So this is going to control, by turning the knob, is going to control my strobe mode and how fast or how slow the light would strobe. Now, the only thing found out about using the strobe mode knob, again, I have the availability here. I can cancel my intensity slider by just clicking X. And by the way, that will cancel all the sliders. Let me just show you that quickly. I'll set a couple sliders here. So I'm doing them, and that's why you do have to go through each page though. So if I hit X, it cancels all the sliders on this page. Then you would have to progress to the next page and cancel the sliders, but it's pretty rapid that you can do that. Then I can hit my set button, and the set button would take out my red color. So if I had numerous reds set here, if I hit my stop all function button, the red's a function, or this is connected to the stop all function, the reds all disappear. The only thing it doesn't do, you'll notice that my strobe setting up here, the knob does not change. Unfortunately, you're going to have to go through, if you use this, you will have to go through individually and change those knobs so that they are turned off. Otherwise, you'll have your strobe feature continuing to work for you there. Now, I decided, since I have a couple more buttons left over here, so I can basically use my controller to set scenes and then save scenes, lighting scenes in the show. So I could go through and just say either using some buttons or sliders or a combination of those, whatever I wanted to do. And let's say I go page 2 and I want these guys at 25 and maybe these guys here at 75, and I go to the next page. Get the idea. I'm setting a couple. All right, and when I get everything set the way I want it to be, I simply go up here and say record scene and give it a name. I'll say scene 6. All right, and then I can say OK, and that would be recorded. If I want to add this to my main cue stack, which is up here, I can do that by selecting main cues, say OK, and then you see that scene 6 was added. The only thing about this is that scene 6 has no timing. So eventually you're going to have to go back in here and add timing, because we can't change timing live here. You have to go back into your function and get into the chaser where this is, and then change your timing for that. But it is a quick way to record scenes if you want. So it almost works like an old-fashioned lighting board, with the exception that we can't get our timing or fade in, fade out in there. I've made duration infinite, so that wasn't a problem. But if you want to do more with timing, you're going to have to go back into the functions menu and do that. Maybe something they'll add in the future for us. Anyway, let me back out of here. So you want to make sure then, if you're going to run these cues, you want to make sure that you have anything in your virtual console turned off. So let me go back through here and hit X and make sure that these are turned off. I had to select down here, by the way, for that to happen. Let me check my downstage 2, X that one out, nothing there, X those two. We're going to want to do that and stop all functions. Let's check the next page. Got 2 sliders active there. Alright, so basically I've shut down all my sliders, and if we look over here on the indicators, we can see that there's nothing happening now. Now, I'm going to use my play button, my stop button, and my previous and next. So say forward, backward, to X, the key structure here. So using my play button on my Nano here, I can hit play, and it will actually start the cue structure. And you'll see that it lights up, and you can see now that it actually does indicate the sliders on my virtual console, what values they've been set at. So not only do I have indication over here on my DMX, but it's actually showing me here on my virtual console. And you can scroll through. Now, if you wanted to make adjustments to these, you could, and then you could record it as a scene. I don't think there's a way of altering the scene right on top. Well, actually there is, yes. But I'm not sure how this would work. My advice would be to, if you want to adjust some things, is go adjust your sliders and everything, record it as maybe scene 1A, and then go back and do your editing and take scenes in and out as you need them. So anyway, as I progress, as I push my forward button, and notice that the play button stays lit, which is kind of handy. It shows us that we're in play mode. And in QLC Plus, this button down here serves two functions. Once we're in play, if we hit it again, it goes to pause mode, and we'll do a little demo on that in a second. Let's say we're ready to go. We want to go to the next cue. I just press move forward. I move to my next cue. You can see the values changing over here on this side. I move forward. I move to my next cue. So basically my forward and backward button are acting as these two buttons. My stop button, it works as this, and my play button works as this. Next cue, back out, which is real quick. Scene 4. Now scene 5, we don't have a fade in time for it, so it's just did a 3-second fade out, and notice that the next scene jumped. So again, you'd have to go into your functions down here, go back, edit your chaser, so your main cues, so that you'd have some timing going on there for you. Now I'm going to hit my stop button. And remember too, I pointed this out in an earlier video, when you hit stop one time, we'll still be left here on scene 7. You need to hit it a second time to reset back to scene 1. Now there's an interesting kind of a phenomenon here that happens, and it's good to understand this. So I'm going to start playing this again. I'll hit my play button, and I'm playing my cues. Now supposedly, I'm going to go to scene 2. Now supposedly, I'm going to start scene 3, and if I hit my play button again, it should pause it. But I want you to notice that it does not pause the values. The values continue to complete over here. So there is that. Maybe that's a little glitch on their part. It will not stop the values from continuing to finish off. Even though the green progression line says that it's stopping, it really doesn't. From what I can read here, it seems like it continues presenting the values and finishing off the cue. So it really does not pause the cue in midstream. It lets the cue finish. So let me see, I'll start this next one by going forward and hit pause. Now you'll notice that my green line stopped, but then you notice that everything over here kept going. Alright? Now one advantage of this is we are in pause mode now. So if I want to move forward or backward, and this is probably the only place this is handy, if you're in rehearsal and they say, okay, we need to move back to scene 2 for a second, could we run it from scene 2? Since we're in pause mode, we can go back to scene 2 right now. And then when I hit my play button again, this will activate play, and we're actually going to load up the values for scene 2 then at that point. So that is where that's handy. But that may be a glitch that I've discovered in there, is that it does not pause the scene from finishing itself out. It kind of pauses it so you can move around in the structure. And we're back in play mode. You'll notice now that the pause button is up. So now it's just going to progress through there normally. And again, if I hit pause, we're in pause mode. But you notice that everything completed. If I were to hit complete, you don't see the DMX values moving at all because they've already completed. So that may be kind of a glitch that they have in there. But you can hit pause, and now I'm in pause mode, and now I can move around to different scenes and then continue from that particular scene then if I want to. So if you're in rehearsal and you need to do that, that's available for you. Okay, so I hope this helps you to understand how you can use a simple controller like this. And actually, I'm controlling 5 different pages of channels with this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different pages of channels, even though it's only a simple controller. And it can use this as a tactile surface then to control these lights. And if like that, it actually works in many respects. It works a lot of ways like some of the modern consoles do. You go between pages to access those sliders. Even the modern audio mixers now, to eliminate the need for a whole bunch of sliders on the console, you have to go through pages. So this is kind of the same concept here. It's using a simple MIDI controller and then using the pages function on QLC Plus to move around and access those.